The Vault is brought to you by Saltire Energy, who continue to be a market leader when it comes to specialist equipment rental in the oil and gas industry. By Lux Scott, a jet-class luxury vehicle company. Look out early in 2023 for some special offers in collaboration with P&J Live. By Fowler Mackenzie, formed in 2001, and who have the longest established calcip standing seam system in Scotland, an industry leader. And by HCS, a Scottish organisation focused on delivering the best IWOCS solutions, bespoke controls equipment and supporting services to the oil and gas industry. Hi everybody, welcome to this very festive edition of The Vault. If you're watching for the very first time, you can see that I'm not in what is my usual studio because I'm out and about currently travelling with the family for Christmas and New Year. So welcome to the show. The Vault is basically an idea that I put together after the pandemic. So during the troubled times, I conducted a host of Zoom interviews with a number of ex-Aberdeen players. I transcribed them and then I put them out on what was my old written blog page. Well, I've taken them, I've re-edited them, I've repackaged them, I've put some fancy artwork around them, and here they are now as brand new video presentations. And I'm absolutely delighted to say our next subject matter is former Aberdeen midfielder Peter Pawlett. Peter grew up in Aberdeen and he came through the youth system. He eventually made his first team debut in February 2009. He played a total of 213 games for the club, scoring 20 goals. My thanks to Scott Baxter for providing these images. Please check out his website. Peter and I began our discussions by looking back at the early days and the path that led him to Pittodrie.
Well, I think for a young boy, you're just going to Saturday morning football training. You're going to, you're playing with your school team. And I think looking back now, you're not really aware of who's watching you. I think you're just, enjoying your football. And I think I must have been, 6, 7 years old. And these scout, every Saturday morning, we would go to just a local park and I'd do Saturday morning training back in Bankery. And then one day, I remember we went for Saturday morning training, and after it, my dad pulled me just in the living room. I was having my lunch or whatever, and he just says, Pete, there was an Aberdeen Football Club scout watching today, and he was really impressed by you, and he wants you to go in and do some training with him or whatever. And at the time, I was a bit like, I don't want to stop playing with my school to my friends type thing. It was a bit of a shock for me, but just went and, my dad was in contact with him and I just went and trained, and it was down Seaton Park, down at the beach, 6, 7 years old. And the rest was that was me in and full, all the way through really. But obviously as a young lad, you're just playing football and someone watches you and you catch their eye and, you're all of a sudden an Aberdeen player.
So any other clubs interested in you, do you know?
No, I don't. Not that I was aware of. I think it was just Aberdeen, and that was it. That was all what was, in the area. There's always talk of when you're actually going up through the levels. The mums and dads say, "Oh, this one's watching you." But I think my mum and dad were always fully, you focus on Aberdeen. Anything you do, anything that comes out with that. But it was just Aberdeen. They've trusted you. They've given you that opportunity. You pay them back type thing. And that was always the feeling that I had about it as well. Definitely. Yeah.
Who were your early coaches?
Well, Chic McClelland was the kind of the head of the youth at the time. I don't think Chic. I think Chic's struggling a bit, and I think he's is it Alzheimer's or something like that, which is a real shame because I was really fond of Chic. He was one of them people that he was a hard person, but he he gave you that, you respected him, and you made sure every time he was watching, you were, at it kind of thing. But I had good coaches, Colin Walker, David Innes, Brian Dunn, Mark Emsley, Derek McInnes, John Lamberty, they all go on. There was so much, 7 coaches. My first ones were Brian Dunn and Ian Gelly. They were my first 2 coaches. And then as you go up the levels, it constantly changes. Colin Walker was one that sticks out for me a lot because he, I felt as though I had a real good relationship with him.
When you are progressing, how do you know that you're progressing well? Do you get feedback from the coaches?
Yeah, I think it's a case of, basically after it, well done, you can improve here, you can do better here. But it was always a case of, I remember I often there was a few times when I would get called up to the older age group, and that kind of gave me a thing that, I'm doing all right here, I'm doing well, I'm performing well, I'm getting my opportunity, I'm going up to that next level. And maybe, I remember I was playing at an age of both myself quite a lot, and I found myself doing that quite often. And I think that was the gauge of, just even Chic speaking to your mum and dad and what their plans were. But I remember it was like S forms and D forms. I think you got offered like deals, I think, as youngsters, and an S form was like a 3-year kind of thing, and a D form was a 1. And I was always 1 years. I never got that S form. I was just 1 year after. But I was just basically coaches speaking to you and getting to know how getting feedback off them.
Okay. When did you make the transition to the first team dressing room?
Oh, first team dressing room, that was it was Mark McGee's first. When he got appointed, that was me moving up. But the end of Jimmy Calderwood's reign, the last 5 games I think I played, and obviously meetings I would be in the dressing room first, but I was still coming in the morning, training, getting changed in the under-19s at the time dressing room. The under-19s would go and train, and I would be in with the first team doing meetings and things like that. But it was the Mark McGee kind of first day pre-season, that was when I officially moved in, into the first team dressing room. But yeah, I think Jimmy Calderwood had been there so long. When I actually moved in, everyone was a bit, it wasn't, usually when a young boy comes in, it's quite a big thing. You get a bit of, do you know what I mean? But the fact that it was quite a big thing within the club anyway, it kind of I was in there and that was it, kind of thing.
Was Jimmy, was he influential on you at all?
Yeah, Jimmy, I really enjoyed playing with Jimmy Calderwood. There was Sandy Clark and Jimmy Nicholl. Sandy was the one that was kind of the point between the youngsters and, Jimmy Calderwood. Jimmy Nicholl also as well, but Jimmy Calderwood was massive for me. First of all, give me that opportunity to, make my debut, and will always be grateful for that. Training, really enjoyed his training, going in with the first team, the likes of Scott Severin, Barry Nicholson, Michael Hart, Jamie Smith, top players. And, I remember watching them, I'd go on a Saturday and watch them, and all of a sudden I'd be playing in the amongst them. So that was obviously a massive thing for me. And Jimmy Calderwood, Jimmy Nicholl and Sandy would be doing the coaching. Jimmy Calderwood did stand at the side, but he was a very good man management, Jimmy Calderwood. It was just, I had can't say a bad word about him really at all.
What do you recall about the time when you got the nod that you were going to make your league debut against Celtic? 2nd of May 2009. Were you nervous?
Yeah. I was shitting myself. Well, of course I was nervous. That's just natural. But I remember it. I got booked in the space of about a minute. I went up with Paul Hartley and I literally headbutted him. And I remember I remember the fans were like loving it. Do you know what I mean? I remember Paul Hartley saying, look, saying you're getting it, and that, like, kind of trying to put a bit of fear into me. And I remember Aidan McGee and Sean Maloney were there, and they were like, "Oh, don't worry about him, wee man. Don't worry about him." But I remember it very well. I remember just after I managed to pick up the ball and go on a bit of a run, and that kind of settled my nerves down a little bit. But yeah, it was unbelievable to make my debut. It was I don't know what was it, 15, 16,000 there at Tawdry, and it was the atmosphere was very good. Yeah.
Can you explain the process of how you found out you were going to play that day? Did Jimmy give you plenty of notice, or did he tell you on the day?
Well, I was aware that I was in the squad, but I had no idea that I'd come on. It's literally, when you're a sub, you're preparing to come on, and it's whether you get the nod or not, so you're just warming up, and all of a sudden you see Jimmy Nicholl, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going on here. Okay. So you don't necessarily yearn going on today. It's just how the game pans out, and you just get that opportunity when it arises. Yeah.
Well, I worked out that you played every game from then until the end of the season. So, Did you think that you had arrived?
I thought the word I had got my aim was to play for Aberdeen's first team, and I had achieved that kind of goal. Do you know what I mean? That was my first goal that I had achieved, and I had managed to accomplish that. But once you're obviously there, you've then got to, keep yourself there, try and progress. And but I feel a sense of, I've worked, all the sacrifices that you made as a youngster, you finally got there, type of thing. But you know that the hard work still, it's a lot harder once you're there. But yeah, of course, it was a proud day for everyone, your family, and everything like that.
Were you disappointed when Jimmy left?
Yeah, well, the last game of the season was Hibs. We played Hibs at home, and then we were getting changed at the end of the season, and he says, right, let's go. We've got a meeting upstairs, and there was a few whispers going about that he was leaving. And then, he just basically stood up in front of everyone and says, that's me going. And I was in a real, it was shock. I was in a lot of shock. I was gutted. He gave me that opportunity, and I was ready to next season really kick on. And, all of a sudden he was going. But it was, a new manager was coming in, and I had to then prove myself, prove yourself and work your way up the ladder again. You didn't know whether you would be stepping back down to the under-19s or you'd stay in the first team. But I was disappointed, very disappointed, because I thought he did very well for the club, very well.
What were your first impressions of Mark McGee?
Well, I remember, what was it he said? He came in the dressing room, and we were all sat around. I don't know if you've heard this story before. And the first thing he says, I want a Bentley and a boat.
A Bentley and a what?
A Bentley and a boat, I think it was, he said. A Bentley and a boat, yeah. And we were all like, basically, I want you to be brilliant for me, get me to the best, and do you know what I mean? That type of thing. And it was a bit like, oh, okay. I can't remember if it was a Bentley and a boat. I'm sure it was something like that. And it was a bit of a shock. But basically, I'm here. I want you to basically do everyone. I want you to be brilliant, win the league, and get me this kind of thing. But I remember pre-season being very tough. Like, that's what I remember. I think he was. Is it Felix McGee or something? Is it the Wolfsburg coach? Yeah. He was quite close with him at the time. And I remember Wolfsburg were doing a specific thing in pre-season, and he made us do it as well. And we were just like nowhere near it. The times and the runs, I think there was 8 specific, we had to do a certain distance in a specific time. And we were maybe there was 8 of them, and we could only do it in, say, 2 or 3. And after that, it was like ridiculous. So that you kind of realise Wolfsburg were at this level, and we need to, get to that level, and that's what he wanted us to do. But I just remember it being very tough, really, at the time.
How frustrating was it for you that you received your knee injury during this time?
Yeah, it was. I had tendonitis, and tendon pain is the most painful thing ever. Absolutely. Like, it wakes you up at night. When you wake up in the morning, it's just horrific. And basically the physios came to the decision that I'd get an operation. And since then, it's all been fine. Yeah, all good. But yeah, frustrations of, stop starting, and, it's when it's not just that injury. When you stop and start, your whole body shuts off, and you've then got to build it up, and you get niggles elsewhere. And it was always a bit of an issue for me, stopping and starting, and other parts of my body suffered with that.
Let's move on to the Craig Brown tenure. How would you assess your progress under Craig Brown?
Well, he shipped me out on loan, so that it wasn't really. The progress wasn't brilliant, Yeah, but I remember pre-season, I was did okay. Do you know what I mean? I know myself, whether you've done enough to get yourself into the team. And I just wasn't, I didn't seem to be in his plans. Yeah, so it wasn't pre-season. It was the end of, yeah. I remember Neil Cooper, and I think we got beat 5-0 off Hearts under Neil Cooper away. And I remember Craig Brown and Archie, and I came on for the last 10 minutes. And then, that was basically they had been watching that game, and I remember Archie and Craig the next week, they were just a bit of, give us all a bit of the hairdryer treatment. It was a bit of everyone needs to put their ideas up here and pull their finger out type of thing. But yeah, I mean, Craig and Archie they really did. They steadied the ship. They give us all, they just got some very experienced players in, and just everything settled down. And I think it was just I can't remember if we were near the bottom. I think we're, 8th, 9th, 10th kind of position. And it was just a case of just steadying the ship. But obviously the following season, I went on loan to St Johnstone until January time.
Were you happy about that move?
I think I wanted to play football, and I wasn't, I remember Ryan Fraser had come in, and Ryan was unbelievable for 6 months, and it was my kind of position. And I remember going away we played away to St Johnstone the start of the season earlier on, and I wasn't even on the bench. I was left out of the squad altogether. I was in the stand, and I think at that point, Neil Cooper, the under-19s coach, he was coming away on match days with us, and he was sat in the dugout with me, and I was very close with Neil, and he just says to me, look, you need to go out and play games now. You're at that age, I think 20, 21. I needed to go. And Steve Lomas from St Johnstone took me there. And obviously, you want to play for Aberdeen. That was what I wanted to do. But St Johnstone, they were a Premier League. Usually when you got on loan, you maybe drop down a level. And it was good to play still at a Premier League team. And, it was a very, it was a good time for me. That it evolved me as a player a lot.
See, when you look back on that time, I guess when it first happened, you might. I think it's human nature to be slightly concerned that maybe you think your time at Aberdeen is over. But then in hindsight, it was actually a really good thing for you that you had that short spell at St Johnstone, because when you came back, you were almost like a different player.
Yeah, no, it was massive for me. I learned so much in that period. Like, being in that dressing room, it was lads, they were good they were good, honest, good, honest players that were in that dressing room, and there was no hiding place at all. Like, you'd come from being a young boy at Aberdeen and still being a young boy, and then all of a sudden you're in, and you're basically a man in that team, and you've got to be a man as yourself. There's no hiding place. I remember Fraser Wright, Stephen Anderson, Callum Davidson, who's the manager at the minute, Dave Mackay, all hard players. And I tell you, in training, you couldn't switch off. In games, if you made a mistake, it was, do you know what I mean? And it did. It built my character, and it was massive for me. That period, just kind of a short period at St Johnstone, it did it, and we actually did really well. I remember, I think we finished third or fourth that season. And it was massive, but my aim was always to go back to Aberdeen and be successful. But as you say, when you go out, you're a bit like, oh no, am I getting shipped out here? But as you say, in hindsight, it was a great thing for me, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, obviously, Derek gets appointed as manager. But I was just quite intrigued by this. Did he sort of seek you out at all and have a chat about where he saw you, how he saw your progression, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, he did. He always says to me, when I was manager at St Johnstone, when we played Aberdeen, you were always one of these boys that we looked at and thought, he's a threat. Like, that was all. When I did my video meetings before, you were a threat. Like, and you need to believe in yourself. You need to know that people think a lot about you. You're a good footballer. You're a dangerous player. Him and Tony Docherty, but in training, I remember maybe when they first came in, I didn't show enough in training. And I remember him pulling me to the side and saying, you need to take responsibility for yourself. You need to go and have a different mentality. And do you know what I mean? Sometimes, like, I had that at St Johnstone, and then you come back and you can set into a bit of certain ways again. But I think he got that mentality in me where it was just kind of decisive. And that was the biggest thing. It was a mentality, the way he spoke. And it was Derek McInnes. He's one of the managers that you want to do well for. He makes you respect him and say, I don't want to let you down, type of thing. That's how I felt about him, him, and I did not want to let him down.
Okay, that's really interesting, because at that time you seemed to flourish under him. So because of the way he was with you and your attitude towards him, do you think that you were enjoying your football more under him?
Yeah, like that was the main. Yeah, he just. I remember that's when he came in. It was like the end of it. Again, it was the last 5 games of the season. I think it was when the split happened. And what actually happened was, remember that at Dundee, I dived. Well, I didn't actually die. It was momentum. But in the paper, I got a bit of a bad name for myself. I remember the Dundee manager, and I remember it all came out, and I got a 2-game suspension. And I remember him pulling me to the side, and he says, look, Pete, I'll stick up for you. Do you know what I mean? You're my player. I will look after you. I will not let you down. I'll support you in the paper. I'll back you 100%. And he says, you go and have your holiday now. You can't play again this season. Go and enjoy yourself and be ready for next season. And for me, that was, for him to say that to me, all of a sudden you build a relationship thinking, I want to make him proud. You know what I mean? That type of thing. And that was a massive thing at the end of that season. And then for next season, I was thinking, during the off season, I was thinking, I'm going to be at my best to have a good season for him next year. And it was just a respect. And, I really liked him as a person, and I really liked him as a manager. And that's what, it made me want to do my best for him, basically.
Let's talk about the semi-final against St Johnstone at Tynecastle. That was a pretty special performance, I have to say. It's one of the best performances, I think, under Derek McInnes. Did you feel it when you were playing the game that this is a bit special, this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think the build up to the game, when you went out at Tynecastle and you just see 3 stands of Aberdeen, 3 stands of Aberdeen fans, it was kind of like, a hair stand up on the back of the neck. This is, you want to perform here. This is, you can do well here. You get remembered. Do you know what I mean? This is when you can, people look back on and think, remember that moment. And everything just seemed to fall into place that day. I think getting off to a good start with Johnny's goal, and then I scored, and then it was just, everything was going for us. Everyone fought for each other. Everyone was on the same page. if you did something wrong, everyone was getting on at each other. And that's what you need to do. You need to, if you're getting on at someone, it's because you want to win and you want to succeed. And everyone had that same fighting spirit, and it was massive. And, you know, you've got a bit Adam up top, Rooney, who just finishes everything. And Johnny was unbelievable. Barry Robson, Willow Flood, you know, Russell Anderson, Andy Gonsadat, you know, just a real good team. And yeah, it was a real special day. Because I remember my family from England were up watching as well. And yeah, it was just, yeah, a really good day. And probably my most fondest memory being a footballer that day, definitely. Yeah.
When did you become aware of the Peter Pawlett song?
I think it was. I can't remember if it was. I think it was before that semi-final game. I can't remember what it was, but I remember them singing it and thinking, "Are they singing about me here?" I was just heard Peter Pawlett, and I was like, "Is that me?" And you know, it's when you hear your fans singing your name, you know, you're buzzing, absolutely buzzing. So, and then I think it was maybe on social media, I'd get a video sent to me or something like that, and all my brothers would be like. My brothers would maybe be there and they would have filmed it and sent it to me or something like that kind of thing. I can't particularly remember the actual game it was, but it was round about that time. Yeah, the semi-final, and then it was Celtic Park, and when we won in the Scottish Cup, the Scottish Cup game when we won 2-1. It was just kind of and then obviously the last minute winner at Dundee United. There was a period of. You know, there was like a month period when I scored 3 or 4 really important goals, and it just kind of took off. And then obviously there was the actual cup final itself. It all just went a bit, crazy, really. And I would be getting, like, every night I'd be getting on Twitter videos, and every Saturday night anyway, I'd be getting loads of videos through and stuff like that. It was funny.
I'm intrigued. Did you know the original song? And if you didn't, did you have to Google it?
I'd heard I'd heard like the tune, but yeah, I was Googling it. I was on iTunes listening to it, thinking, oh yeah, okay. But yeah, I didn't know, like, you know, I didn't know who the Human League were. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of just obvious, just kind of once it took off, I did some research on it, and it was, that's how I found out about it, really.
Showing your age now, fella. That was my generation. Right. Sadly, you injured your groin only 2 weeks before the final. Did you know as soon as it happened that you were in trouble?
Not particularly, no. I remember doing it against St Johnstone. I'm sure it was a free kick. And I hit a free kick, and I just felt something in my groin. I thought, it's a bit of fatigue in my groin. I'll be all right to finish this game. But then it got a bit worse, and I was thinking, Derek McInnes pulled me up and says, look, no chances, come off. I think we were up 1-0 at the time. Come off. Got a scan on the Monday morning. Yeah, you've got a tweak in your groin. And at the time, I was quite relaxed about the situation. So I thought I was walking fine. I was getting up out of bed. I was okay. And it was just a case of I will do nothing until the day before the Scottish Cup game, the League Cup final. I will do nothing at all. And that was the plan. And as time went on, I was getting, and you start to test it a little bit. It's natural, you test it, and I was still feeling it. And then it's about a week before, I got a few doubts in my mind, thinking, like, surely not. I was speaking to the doctor, physios, what can we do? Can you do any injections, kind of thing, to kind of mask the pain? And they basically said, no, you can't inject into a muscle. You damage your rest of your career as much as it was the most important game of my career. I couldn't then sacrifice the rest, because he says your groin you'd probably, like, you know, you'd do so much to your groin and it'd give you problems throughout the rest of your career. So yeah, it was the Friday. I thought, I'm going to give it a go. And we went into 11v11, and I just knew straight away that it wasn't right. And I just was in the dressing room. I was in absolute tears, like, for Yeah, oh yeah, crying my eyes out, and I was in, and all the lads were just dripping in one by one. And I was, absolutely gutted. It was the one thing you look forward to, and I knew I was not involved in it as much as the day. It was as such I was involved in it so much. It didn't, like, you want to play. Do you know what I mean? That was it, and yeah, it was horrible. That initial, when I found out, and then 2-3 hours after, I just couldn't stop crying. Do you know what I mean? It was awful. But yeah, it's part of football, and I could have been like, oh, I'm fine. And then imagine playing 2-3 minutes in and coming off and saying, oh, I've played in it. Like, you think of Johnny. Johnny did his shoulder. Imagine both of us coming off in the space of 10 minutes. It would have just been detrimental to the whole team. So it was a decision that, we made, and I had to get on with it. And thankfully, we won the cup. And yeah, that was the main thing, really.
There's a few abiding memories about that game, but I think for me the one abiding memory was when you came. We were sat in the stand opposite the dugout, and
yeah,
I think people were starting to filter out. This was after the boys lifted the cup, but the lads lifted you up and put them on your shoulders, right?
Yeah,
put you on their shoulders and carried you around, and that's when the Peter Pawlett song started again. I thought that was quite. For me, that was quite a defining moment for you because to me, that showed you how much the fans held you in regard, but also how much your teammates must have held you in regard to do that for you. Was it a special moment for you? How did it feel?
Yeah, it was. It was such a special. Like, at the time, you're just a bit like, oh, you're a bit embarrassed on shoulders. What do I do? But when you look back at it now, you think how, boys coming over to me, lifting me up, like, it was so special for me that, do you know what I mean? As you say, it meant a lot knowing that they think a lot about me. But I got on with everyone in that dressing room. I had good relationships with everyone. That was the one dressing room that I can say was the best ever was that year. We were such a close-knit group. It was, do you know what I mean? It was brilliant, and I absolutely loved it. But yeah, that was a moment where I thought, like, wow, this is unbelievable. Getting picked up on shoulders and 40,000 Aberdeen fans singing your name. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't get much better than that, really.
Okay, let's talk about the next season because we finished second in the league, and I only started to appreciate this again when I was doing the research. We lost every single game to Celtic that season. And this is when, the pundits start talking about they've got no bottle and they're mentally not strong enough. Do you think there was a psychological problem when you played in the big games against Celtic?
I don't think there was. I think there was a bit of a too much of a nervousness about us. Everyone was a bit uptight. It became such a huge game. I think everyone it took over everyone. Do you know what I mean? A little bit too much. You thought, you'd do more. You'd eat more pre-match meal. You know what I mean? You do that. You think, oh, I've got to do this more. I've got to go to bed early. Instead of just relaxing, no, keep to our routine. We're good. Let's keep the process. When we play, let's do what we do. Don't respect them anymore just because it's Celtic. And I think that was the biggest thing. It was just a case of we just were a bit uptight about the whole situation. And that didn't help us, But Celtic they're a good team. They're a very good side. And, it's getting that balance right. But I think sometimes you maybe do, instead of just playing against 11 v 11, it's us lads against them lads. You maybe think about, oh, they've got a Celtic strip on. And sometimes it's that mentality that if you get that right in your head, you're okay. And I think that was the biggest thing.
I always thought it was just a psychological thing, It's fascinating as a fan to watch it, Then let's talk about the following season again. The goal against Rijeka in the Europa League qualifying game. Oh my God, that... most goals get me out my seat, but that had me out my seat, punching through the air. How satisfying was that victory that night?
Oh, it was, because it was unbelievable. I just remember the first 20 minutes in that game, we got absolutely played off the park. I think they hit the post 2 or 3 times. And it was that hot. It was that hot that night. We had a drinks break. And once we had the drinks break, we basically all just got together and we were like, look, lads, let's just settle down a minute. It's 0-0. We've got through let's just start relaxing and playing. And there was a little, Derek McInnes changed the shape a little bit and did a little tinkering here and there. And it just literally, the game just started to turn in our favour a little bit. And then once Big Andy scores the header, all of a sudden you have something to hang on to. And that all of a sudden, as soon as you've got something to hang on to, you just, when you're tracking a runner, you just track him a bit more and you defend that bit better. And then, in the second, score that header. And I surprised myself scoring a header. Never mind scoring a header from the 18-yard box. But I actually scored a header in the first half as well, in that game. And I think that one was onside, and the one I actually scored was offside a touch.
Right.
Yeah. So it cancelled, the two cancelled each other out. But it was an unbelievable night. And I just remember after the dressing room it was an amazing dressing room, just all sitting there thinking they've not been beaten at home in about 3 years or something, and we've just beaten them 3-0. And that was the biggest, it was a top team, and it was a real big accomplishment, a night that, is up there as well, that I remember. Just having a shower and just with all the lads all absolutely buzzing. It was really good, really good. Then back to the hotel. It was amazing.
What was a shame for me was that after that game, you were sort of in and out of the team.
Yeah.
Did this start to become quite a frustrating period for you?
Yeah, I scored that, and then I remember the return leg at Pittodrie, and I was on the bench, and I was a bit gutted. You know what I mean? I was thinking, let me play me again. I want to play. It was a bit of obviously Derek McInnes had his reasons and his structure and things like that, and I can totally understand that it's a manager's decision, but inside you're disappointed. And yeah, it was in and out the team, and I know Kenny McLean came in, and Kenny was, is your manager's signing, he has to play every week. You need to justify the reason, and he was similar position to me. But yeah, I was in and out of the team, and obviously you want to play week in, week out, and but we were in a good side, and I appreciated that we were a good team, and there was good players, and we were all fighting for that place. And I know it wouldn't be easy, all very good players, and you had to fight for your spot.
See when you're on the bench, because again, I looked at it, there was a lot of games where you came on from the bench. How hard is it to sort of get into a routine and play your normal game? Because you're not getting much time. So I'm kind of guessing that the influence on the game when you come on for only a few minutes is nowhere near what it could be when you start the game, right?
No, yeah, it's massive. Yeah, coming off the bench it's horrendous, because you're going from sitting, especially at Pittodrie, them wooden benches, you're getting off it, and all of a sudden you're sprinting about, running, and I hate coming off the bench. I just hate it. It's so tough. You've got to get up to speed straight away. It is tough. Your body has to function in a different way. You've got to, it's little 10, 50-minute bursts, and you're not going to get that 90 minutes where you can get your fitness up and your football, physical strength up. So your body's not developing and strengthening over time. You're just getting little bits here and there. But it's important that your training schedule during the week, you've got to kind of get your load that you should be doing every week, because you're only playing, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour tops at a weekend. And it is frustrating, very frustrating.
Okay, mate, almost done. A couple more questions. When did you start to think that it was maybe time to move on?
Yeah, I think when I went to MK Dons, it was such a tough decision. It was really tough. But I think I came to the situation where I wanted an opportunity to go down south. I think I would have, it was Robbie Nielsen at the time. He phoned me, and he was he wanted me to go down, and I all this time I communicated with Derek McInnes and Tony Zocchi. I was in basically every time I'd have a phone call, I'd tell them, because I thought out of respect, I'd tell them how I'm feeling. Like, I wasn't a regular in the team. I was coming, bits and bobs. So I thought to myself, like, I'm going to be honest with them. It's not as though I'm playing every week and getting this. I want to play football, and I've told Derek McInnes that I want to play football. So I would 100% honest with him. I was going down to see the facilities, meet up with him, and he was, obviously wasn't happy, but that was what I was doing. That's the decision. I was in that last 5-6 months of my contract where you could speak to other teams. And I think that the fact that I wasn't a regular at Aberdeen, I wanted to try down south. And, the decision you make, whether it was the right or the wrong decision, do you know what I mean? There's lots of pros and cons with the whole situation. At the time, sometimes I regret it. Sometimes I think it was the right decision, but it was the decision I made at the time, and I can't let it, linger in my mind anymore,
Okay, mate.
But
Last question.
Yeah.
Tough question, eh? Tough decision, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, last question. If you could turn back the clock and have your time again, what would you have changed? Or do anything differently?
I think now, you don't actually realise how much see how you live your life away from football. Like, obviously, I live my life good. I live my life fine. I'm not really going out and I'm not that type of lad. Do you know what I mean? I do, but it's the little things, doing your extra strength work at home, doing your extra dieting a certain way, maybe speaking to an actual nutritionist. Like, when you're younger, you just kind of get on with it and you don't look deep into things that can improve you like that way. And I think I wish I did it when I was 19, 20, 21, spoke to someone about nutrition, any way in which could have helped me. I mean, that's the one thing that I think I definitely would have, on a night, come home, do my strength work, build my, my core up, protect my hamstrings, because I suffered a lot with injuries. And I think I wish I did that at a younger age, and I would have probably played a lot more games and not suffered with as much injuries. That's the one thing that I would definitely have, changed 100%. Took more time in, that sort of way.
My thanks to Peter Pawlett. If you enjoyed today's watch, I would be very grateful if you would please consider clicking on that little red button and come and join us here on Alibeg ABTV. The reason that I ask that is quite simple. For 2023, big plans, looking to make a lot more content and hopefully build the channel as we go into 2023. And I can only do that with your help. So I'd be very grateful if you would please consider subscribing. We are done. Thank you so much for watching today. We will be back with more editions of The Vault in 2023. So have a very happy new year, and I wish you all the very best for the new year. I shall see you again very soon. Bye for now.